how do you get started networking? You're out of grad
Right.
school, and how do you get started? Yeah. So what I did, I happened to get into a regional orchestra that's outside of the city of Chicago,
Mhm.
and the regional orchestras are full of freelancers. So there's like all your connections right there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had all those connections instantly that they also, all those musicians in that regional play in like three, four, five other regional orchestras.
Right.
Also, there was a contractor, which is typical of a regional orchestra, a contractor for other pickup orchestra gigs and other gigs within the orchestra. He or she will notice you, like, oh, keep that person on my roster. So like the
Hmm.
regionals is where it's at. So that's how I got started, and then made connections from there. What about you? How did you get started?
Well, I have relocated a couple times. So most of us have as
Yeah.
freelancers. One relocation, I had one connection. It was in Chicago before I moved there. Like I knew one person, but this person knew a lot of people. So she gave me a list of names and numbers. Now, this was back a long time ago when you could actually make a phone call and people wouldn't be put off by it. So I had about 100 people, emails and phone numbers, and I called every single one. And I hit the ground running with work when I moved into Chicago at the day I got there. And
Yep.
then I played a gig with this person, and then I turned into that. It was just like a tree, and it grew really fast because there was plenty of work. But before that, my life in Cincinnati after grad school was taking some auditions for the regionals. So you have to find out you have to discover where those are posted, or sometimes it's just word of mouth where there are auditions. And then, like you said, once you're in one, you get to know this person, that person, the contractor. As long as you're on your best behavior and you make a good impression, they will, I'm sure, use you again or recommend you to something else.
Yeah.
It's kind of how it works.
Like what you did, calling all those people, you really have to be proactive and put on your little
Oh my
detective
God.
hat
Mm-hmm.
and maybe do all that calling or nowadays emailing. But if you don't know where regional orchestras are, you have to get online and find them. I've definitely searched orchestras in my area and who the principal flute was. So
Mm-hmm.
find out who the
Mm-hmm.
principal is of your instrument. And then
Right.
you have to contact that
You
principal.
do. And sometimes it's terrifying. I'll tell you, every phone call, and I was in Germany calling the States because I was relocating from Germany. I was terrified every single call. I was like, they're going to hate me. They're going to, smear me because I'm trying to horn in on people's work. But I didn't care. I had no choice. I had to just suck it up and put on my big girl pants and call these people because it wasn't easy.
Right. You have to do the work. I think the biggest thing, maybe, or a big point to make that we know is that you can't sit back and let work come to you.
Yeah, yeah, for
Like,
sure.
you
Mm-mm.
have to go out there and make
Mm-hmm.
yourself known. And yeah, so that is one thing you can do to start making connections
Mm-hmm.
is I mean, winning a regional orchestra is awesome, but if you don't do that, you can try and sub in one. And how you get on the sub list is you have to contact the principal
Mm-hmm.
of your
Mm-hmm.
instrument and just real cleanly and succinctly ask to take a lesson so that you can be considered to be on their sub list.
I mean, yeah, be really transparent about
Yeah.
and really down to earth about that kind of a call. But taking a lesson with the principal of the major symphony in your
Yeah.
city, that's another. I mean, that could be very frightening too. But you got to make yourself known.
And also, I would say this making yourself known reminds me of about starting off as a freelancer, or really anytime as when you're a freelancer, you have to be visible,
Yeah.
like both physically out and
Mm-hmm.
about, like go to
Mm-hmm.
concerts,
Yeah.
and then of course there's social media, which we could talk about in a minute. As an example, I had out here in Hawaii, I got a phone call from the Hawaii Symphony, this like frantic call from the personnel manager. Do you know anybody that can sub like tomorrow's rehearsal and then the
Mm-hmm.
concert right after? Like, we are desperate. And I had just met this woman who was playing in a military band and just like passing through.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not exactly the same. She's not setting up freelancing here. But anyway, the example still works for freelancers. She came up to me at a flute choir event, like
Mm-hmm.
she went and she came up to me and talked to me and told me her background. And we actually got together and played flute duets, something I never ever
Aw,
do. But yeah,
that's nice.
like a week or so later, I got that call from the Hawaii Symphony personnel manager.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking, like, who do I know? She popped in my mind, and
Yeah.
I thought she could do it. She could do it,
Right.
but she was in my mind. If she had never done all
Right.
that, I would have never
Yes.
thought of her,
Right.
So you have to do that. And then going to concerts, like you just have to
Hmm.
go because then
Yeah.
people think about you and are often get started with freelancing with like doing last minute sub work. Like, can you
Right.
go to the concert in 2 hours?
Yes.
That's how you
Yes.
get started. So
Just being so available. I
being
know.
available is the
Mhm.
other thing.
And socializing too. I mean, you don't have
Yep.
to go crazy with this, but being able to have conversation outside of work with your fellow musicians and get sort of the lowdown on what's going on and get to know people. In a bigger city, we need each other more. We
Yeah.
need the sub so we could take the other thing. We need the reliable people coming in who are proving to be reliable substitutes for us so that we can do other jobs or vice versa. I want to be that person, the go to. So I had to learn how to be the go to in order to be trusted with jobs from other people.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned in the last episode or video that we did, like that ladder effect in a town where you have like the base level players,
Right.
and then like the next levels up or that are doing the
Mm-hmm.
better gigs, and those like ones in the bottom middle are going to sub out to do the top gigs and like get opportunity to get in there because they're
Mm-hmm.
going to need subs. But of course, like we mentioned last time, you have to be in a city big enough. But that
Right.
reminded me of you also have to be willing to jump in there and sight read a concert or whatever
Yeah.
the last minute situation. You have to.
Yep.
If you say no, that was your opportunity, and it's gone.
Yeah. You've
Would
got
be
to
gone.
take that. It's
Yeah.
so true.
So I guess that's
Yeah.
another thing to consider with making connections and networking is being willing to see an opportunity when it comes, because it may
Yeah.
never come again, with a certain group.
Right.
It could
Right.
just be an extreme situation, like the entire fleet section or whatever got sick. Can
Yeah.
you please come? And you have to say yes, and do it.
There's a Yo-Yo Ma concert I played, and it was an outdoor amphitheater thing, and he wasn't going to be at the rehearsal. And the night before, the personnel manager put out an email: "Has anyone played this piece? Because we want a cellist to come in and play it, solo with orchestra, so we can do a sound check."
Oh,
I
yeah.
was like, "I played it. I never played it."
Yeah, that's exactly how freelancing works. I mean,
Yeah,
exactly how. I have a similar
yeah.
story. This was back in grad school. But I went in for my audition in grad school for the orchestra placement. And I was supposed to bring a piccolo. I mean, I was just stupid. I had no idea what was happening. And
Yeah, yeah.
it had Tchaikovsky 4, which is like the biggest orchestral excerpt for the piccolo
Mm-hmm.
on the list. And I said, I don't know what I said. I didn't have my piccolo. I don't remember what I said. But they said, "Can you play piccolo and have you heard of this piece?" I'm like, "Yes and yes." So they put me on piccolo.
Holy shit.
And then since then I've been a piccolo player. For
Oh,
wind players, like if you get in on those auxiliary instruments, that's another
yeah.
avenue to getting
Hmm.
gigs because they'll always need like, can you play bass clarinet? Do you own an alto flute? Like, can you play contrabassoon? And what you do is if you don't own those, you say yes and you go find one.
Yeah,
Well, you
exactly.
you have to like you do it.
Yeah.
That's another example of your opportunity.
I read a book by Katie Couric, but it wasn't just Katie writing. It was a whole bunch of celebrities and famous people. They each had a chapter. And I think it was Ryan Seacrest. And he had just a couple paragraphs, but he's like, say yes to everything. It stuck with me. It's like, just say yes and figure out how you're going to do it.
It's been a great talking about how to network, and we'll talk about stage etiquette and stuff next episode.
Yes, that'll be great. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, please join us again. Like and share,
And
subscribe.
the gig life. And we will see you next time.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.